Hi everybody, so today is Sunday 14th of July 2013. Obviously I mentioned earlier in a previous sort of like video that I've just uploaded from Metropolis that there was a couple more videos that I hadn't actually uploaded. I completely forgot. One of them is the one that's going to follow this little message. Basically it's the it was a 75 years of Superman presentation, and I wish I had stayed for the whole thing. I think it was going on for about 2 hours. I really did wish I'd stayed for the whole thing, but I had to go run off for the Q&A autograph session for Michael Rosenbaum and Alessandro Giuliani. But this one is, as I say, it's only about half an hour's footage that I was able to get, because I had to scutter off for the autograph session. But do enjoy it. I mean, for what I've been able to take and what I've been able to get, it is actually worth watching. So enjoy it as best as possible, and yeah, I hope you'll like it. It is quite educational and very informative as well. So yeah, without further, I'm just going to stop talking now.
Here, this is the 75 years of Superman.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about how his look has changed over those 75 years, different permutations of the Man of Steel. Now, this is not going to be all-inclusive, because they do want to wrap this up around 5 o'clock tomorrow.
Oh.
So we're going to rush through this. I wrote notes, so you'll see me looking at it very frequently. So anyway, yeah, we're going to hit some of the highlights here. We're going to take a little tour through Superman's history. And then you guys are going to be real lucky, because you're going to get to ask questions of real Superman. Alright, so get some real good questions, Ray. We're going to pass out among you, and hope you'll have something to stump them with, maybe. But anyway, Superman wrote a speech here. But Superman's done so much, not just in his own adventures, but in our world as well. People who have never even seen a comic book know who Superman is. And he's been parodied, ridiculed, attacked, imitated, but he's never gone out of style. In fact, there's they talk about comic books, they talk about movies now, superhero stuff. Who do you think they named it after, right? Okay. So, first of all, we're going to start at the very beginning of Superman, because not all of you may know about his origins.
Exactly.
Didn't know.
Oh, that's awesome.
Anyway, the first Superman wasn't even a hero. He started out in a fanzine called Science Fiction. It was published by Jerry Siegel in 1933. And fanzines, for those of you younger people, they're fan magazines that people put together, what you might see on the newsstands or in a comic book. And a number of people who contributed to the Superman legend started out in fanzines, like Siegel and Schuster. Also, Julius Schwartz, who edited Superman for 15 years. Walt Weisinger, who edited the titles before him. Let's see, made a list of people. Roy Thomas, John Byrne, Roger Stern, Marv Wolfman, Len Wein, Rich Buckler, Jerry Ordway. All of them started doing fan work, and that's what got them the attention that they needed to go and pro. Okay? So, but in this Superman, I'm sorry some of you in the back can't see this. But he started out as his power. He didn't have superpowers except he was psionic. He could do telekinesis. He couldn't lift a building or anything. He's also completely bald, like Lex Luthor. He's also a bad guy. But they liked the idea of the Superman. So they a little later on, Jerry went to Joe and said, "I've got this great idea for it." Real high tech, you know. And again, this is based off of a pencil sketch, but it shows a very strong man and a rather familiar logo. The Man of Steel is lifting some guy over his head while machine gun bullets are bouncing off of him. He's wearing nothing but a pair of slacks and a t-shirt, more or less a muscle tee or a white coat. And if you know his first story, that's probably ironic. But he's a genius in intellect, a Hercules in strength, a nemesis to wrongdoers, the Superman. And that was the first look of Superman. So if you have anyone saying that, well, he's not changed a whole lot in 75 years, well, he started out in jeans and a t-shirt, so I'd say he's changed just a little bit.
I know, they brought that back.
And they brought that back. I actually didn't know that. Because when Grant Morrison, when they actually brought the new 52 of Action Comics, Grant Morrison said that he was modelling his Superman on Bruce Springsteen. When it should have been of this the original.
Side by side, Clark Kent, Superman, one and the same. Don't tell me. Just keep a secret. These guys. But anyway, the original shield was literally looked like a gladiator shield with a simple S inside. Rather large trunk, shall we call it, and then almost like ballet slippers there. So that was the first illustration. And now, in 1938, you all know what happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No, what?
Boom.
And you know, it's very similar to the illustration I showed you, except this one's in color. But inside, it was, the feet weren't always colored red; they were frequently blue. In this one, the belt is red. During the next few years, they did a lot to tweak the look of Superman. Sometimes his cape emblem would be blue and white, or it'd be red and yellow, or completely yellow. And it took them a while to kind of sort out what they really wanted the Man of Steel to look like. So, but if you want to see what the very original Golden Age Superman looked like, come on up.
Wow. Oh, wow.
All right, tell us who you are.
Superman.
Very good. And what is your significance?
Well, I'm not really sure, but I'm very, very strong. I was adopted, but I have no idea really where I came from or why this happened to me.
You didn't know you're from,
What?
Nothing.
Something tell me.
Nothing. No, you're fine. What is the basic?
Well, I wanted to do something, bold. But actually, I work at night. I don't want anyone to know who I am. I don't want to draw any special attention. But when they see me, I want them just to see the color. This is kind of like a police badge. This kind of symbolizes that I'm all good. The rest is, I saw circuses with my mom and dad. Strong being dressed.
Now, you're like supremely powerful. You like light a matchstick and ignite a sun.
I don't have any vision powers.
Okay, no vision powers. But other than that,
a problem?
No. Now, and you can fly, right?
Well, I can leave beneath the mile. You can't do that, Kirby.
Not on a weekday, no. And you're strong. You're all powerful.
Stronger than a locomotive.
That's pretty darn strong. And fast. Fast is like, right?
Yes.
Okay, and nothing can hurt you, right?
Well, there's that bursting shell thing. We don't talk about that.
Okay, and of course you're really nervous.
Oh no, actually, I say I'm not a cop. I can see a wrong and I can write it in the way that I think it needs to be done. I was raised by two parents and had very good conservative values, and I feel like I wanted to help make that happen.
All right. Well, then, the other comments for your parents here?
Well, just I'm glad you're here and support me through all my changes.
That's good.
All right. Next, we'll go to a later look as the look of Superman evolved. familiar painting here. It used to hang in the lobby of the DC offices. Originally it had a logo very similar to the Action Comics one, which is kind of a diamond, upside down diamond with an S inside. When they started changing the shape to resemble more the look of the emblem as we know it today, and it looks very much like the one you'll see in Man of Steel that you might be watching next week. Okay? But anyway, this
might be. Excuse me.
And it comes to the DC office.
Still not sold.
And recently,
tickets are
exactly.
And it now has a happy home. It's, everybody knows where it is now. Now, by about 1945, here's how Superman is starting. As you can see, or you might be able to see, the emblem is now more symmetrical. It resembles now the closed S that we all now see. John Byrne described the yellow parts of it as looking like two fishes swimming in opposition to each other. But you'll see here, the two main artists after Jerry Siegel were Wayne Boring, who's in the black and white up here, Al Plastino, who had been a newspaper strip artist and pitched in to become one of the main artists. And you'll see also, the picture of Fiddler started out as a little guy in a bowler cap and a bow tie, and he changed into kind of like a science fiction outfit later on. So it's not just Superman whose look evolves over the ages. If you look at Lois Lane as well, she's always keeping up with current trends fashion-wise, and her hairstyle is constantly changing. But so, Perry White's one of the few characters that until recently really kind of stayed the same consistently, except on the television. But we'll be getting to it soon.
Oh no.
But not everybody got with the program. Here's a page from a 1948 Superboy where it has the outside shape of the familiar diamond, but the inside is still drawn kind of loose, like
I spot Zatanna and Diana Troy.
This is by another Schuster associate, John Satella, who went on to illustrate Superboy Adventures well on into the 60s. And he kept that little
Later, boys, later.
And then we get to the serials. Kirk Allen. Everybody see the Kirk Allen stuff? Huh?
Yeah.
All right. And it looks very similar to what we'll see later on television, but it's a very good representation of the super suit at that time. Even in the animated sequences that they used to fool people into thinking he was flying. But then we're going to get to somebody else who really popularized the look of Superman, and that is
George Reeves.
All right, and George Reeves' outfit was very, very close to the Superman of the comic book. You notice he has kind of a barrel chest, like a lot of the athletes and the professional wrestlers did at that time. We also saw that in some of the illustrations by Wayne Boring and Al Plastino. The only difference was that the back of the cape at the top was a little bit lower than the others, but if you don't want to hear me blathering about it, let's talk to George Reeves right now.
Way. That's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Thank you. Very good. I think they know you. I think they might. Yeah, they might. All right. And you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself? Right behind Superman.
I think it's a pretty good imagery.
Close?
Yeah.
Although I've gone from a barrel chest to a barrel midsection.
Now, I notice your colors are not as bright as Superman in the comics. Now, why is that?
That's correct. Well, you mentioned TV. And at the time that the serials were finishing up and the TV wanted to pick up the story, they were still in the black and white era. And the people who were working on the costuming at the time realized that if you wanted the contrast of colors to pop and you could see the emblem real well, the trunks and everything had a clear division, you couldn't film it in color yet. So they made it in this, so so that when you see the first 2 seasons in black and white, now you can get a good look at the emblem, and the cape, and the trunks. And speaking of the cape,
Yeah. It's fantastic.
Now, you're a familiar sight to fans of the Celebration here. What kind of reaction do you get when you also make various appearances at different conventions and other events? What kind of reaction do you get when they see you?
well,
Uniform, excuse me.
yes, thanks. So if you're anywhere near my age, I'll just let you fill in those numbers yourself. You will remember being a small boy and coming home rushing home to grab your favorite kitchen towel and pinning it to your collar and listening for that opening segment of the episode. And since I've been coming here as George Reeves, Superman, people my age and some older, some really younger, have seen me and walked up to me and said, "You are my Superman. You are the one that I grew up with." Absolutely. And it's for you.
What does this Superman in particular mean to you personally?
I'm glad you asked. Somebody asked me earlier about, why George, what was so important about George. I'm a product of a broken home. I was 5 when my father left, and I'd have to wait all week before I could see my dad. Every day I came home from school, I could see that other father figure in my life, and that was George Reeves. And every time at the end of the show, whenever he was playing his part to the audience and he did a familiar wink, I thought he was winking at me.
No.
And that meant a lot to me as a little kid.
Or are you going to be hanging around for the next 4 or 5 hours?
I thought this was going to drag out through Monday, but actually I have a program I have to go prepare for if you don't mind me.
What program would that be?
The Adventures of Superman.
There's a program going on at Baymont at 5 o'clock called Careless of Superman. If you haven't seen it yet, please come tonight. If you did, I hope you
I didn't get to see it, no.
But please, by all means,
I'll see if I can. Is it? Yeah? Cool.
Very much like the show.
Like the show. Brilliant.
All right, and as the 50s progress, and yes, I remember it too. I know the age groups. Eventually, Kurt Swan becomes the artist for Superman. He makes the shield emblem more symmetrical, and in fact, when you look at DC licensing, that is the model for most of the Superman images that you see anymore. He had maybe to some extent less vibrant style than a lot of artists, but if you ever talk to any of the writers that work with him, they tell you that whatever you asked for in the script, Kurt Swan could deliver it, and he delivered it on time. He was penciling up to 2 books a month when some people can't even keep up with 1. So he was a phenomenal artist, and he stayed on the book from, and also the newspaper strips, various merchandising items. He was on Superman in one form or another from, I think the early 50s on up to 1986. And that's pretty good when you can't get some artists to stay from one issue to the next. Next. The perils of working with strangers.
That's it.
Now, through the 50s and 60s, they largely relied on Swan and Racino and Boring to draw the adventures of Superman, with a very few exceptions. But when Mort Weisinger left in the late 1970s, they brought in new artists like Jack Kirby. Now, anyone here know who Jack Kirby is?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. For those of you who don't know, he had a hand in creating Captain America, Fantastic Four, the Mighty Thor, most of the 60s Marvels, the Newsboy Legion. He invented the genre of love comics and young buddy comics and things like that. and was an active force in creation for decades, okay? But even Kirby, who liked doing things his own way, couldn't quite master the look of the Man of Steel. It's a little hard to tell from this, but his chest emblem is almost a circle with like a line through it for the S. It's almost like the Kingdom Come version of it. And he frequently didn't draw Superman with a spit curve, which is kind of like a little wave across the top of his head. So they got Al Plastino to come in and redraw his figures. And after about a year or so, they brought in Murphy Anderson, who was a guest at the Celebration a few years ago. Anderson not only was inking Kurt Swan at the time, he was also redrawing the Superman and Jimmy Olsen figures in Jimmy Olsen's old comic. He was redrawing the Lois Lane heads and Superman in her book, and even in Supergirl in Adventure Comics. He was redrawing Clark Kent in there, which is kind of funny because the artist Mike Sikowski had been drawing Superman for 10 years in the Justice League of America. Wow. And all of a sudden he needed redrawing, go figure. The DC wanted a consistent look from the Man of Steel. Now they're a little bit more liberal with how he's interpreted. Even the great Jack Kirby had trouble drawing Superman.
Tony Daniel draws on that.
Yeah, I love Tony Daniel's drawing of it. It's amazing.
In the early 70s, when Julius Schwartz took over as editor, they got rid of all the kryptonite on Earth.
Oh no, I know, it's such a shame. Absolute shame.
No more robots, no more this entire pantheon that Walt Weisinger had built up with the Revenge Squad and Candor and all the other accoutrements that Superman had built up around himself. And another thing they did was they pulled Clark from the blue suit, white shirt and red tie, and as you can see, he's looking pretty fly there. You can take him out even. And they also made him a newspaper, or they took him out of the newspaper and made him a television anchor, which of course made more problems for him because, 5:30, he's got to be in front of the camera while the oil tanker is burning in Metropolis Harbor. More conflict. But after a while, they brought him back to the Daily Planet. They brought back Kryptonite to the Legend because that's what people wanted to see. The sales were good. So that's why they brought Kryptonite, all that stuff back. And Mario Puzo, when he wrote the screenplay for Superman the movie, he didn't know that Clark was, in TV finally. He just wrote it like he was at the newspaper. That's why the movie has him in the newspaper.
As it should be.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. Woo! Yeah.
Okay, I'm done. I was going to ask if anybody's seen that movie, but I guess I got my answer. So how many of you, is this your Superman? Hey? Yeah? He is to a lot of people. And they very successfully captured the look of Superman, would you say, straight from the comics?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And, my God, doesn't he look like a Kurt Swan drawing?
Yeah.
But speaking of Kurt Swan, actually, I'm not just going to speak of Kurt Swan because this movie was very influential. Because up to this point, the Fortress of Solitude was like built into an Arctic cliffside during the Silver Age. Jor-El and Lara looked like they were stepping out of the 50s B science fiction film with a big sun on the chest and the green, suit and everything. Well, this is John Byrne's favorite movie. John Byrne was a fan artist who moved up to Marvel Comics, was drawing the X-Men at the time. He's drawn things like Captain America, Fantastic Four, just about everything. If he didn't draw it, he wrote it. And in 1986, DC put out an offer, said, would you like to take over Superman?
Yeah, wow.
He said yeah.
He said yeah.
And what he did was visually, he pretty much copied the look of the Christopher Reeve, basically. You see how the cape flows into his collar, as opposed to like being tucked in like some sort of secret flap under his shoulder blades. He also enlarged the insignia, but he still keeps the Kurt Swan look about it. But he brought a more dynamic look to Superman that lasted for about about 2 or 3 years. And then after a while, they brought, when John Byrne left the book, they brought it, you know, they're still playing around with Superman.
There was already a Superman Unchained, too?
Took out
Now we know where the title comes from.
Another universe. And this is where Superman really developed his code against killing, which we all appreciate, right? That also makes a hero, right?
Yep.
Anyone can kill, but it takes somebody really clever to figure out a way to bring him to justice. But this is a look for Superman for a very brief period, and I thought we'd have one more Superman like that.
Damn shame.
But DC's still not afraid to look and play around with the look of Superman for this time. But eventually, all things got to come to an end. Right?
Yep. Oh, so true. Whoa.
Eventually, the Man of Steel he encounters Doomsday, and he gives up his life to save Metropolis from the Doomsday monster. And in his place come 4 different Supermen. The Cyborg and the Eradicator, Steel and Superboy, a new Superboy, not just a short, young version of the Kal-El we know. And again, all of it based on the classic Superman look, but very distinct in its own way. We find out that one of them is a villain. We find out one of them isn't very nice. And we find out one is still learning how to use his powers, and they're a little different. He has tactile telekinesis that can take apart a machine just by touching it. And the other person we find out is Shaquille O'Neal.
Well said. That's well put.
All right, and after that, Superman loses his powers after he's resurrected. I mean, when you're resurrected, don't you lose your powers?
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
He wouldn't have. And also, to look a little more contemporary, he lets his hair grow. Now, in the early 70s, they let Clark have sideburns, like all the way down to like here. It's pretty radical. Let his hair touch the back of his collar. Ooh. But this look gets a little bit of a bad rap. They call it the mullet of steel. But who I believe rocks the look.
Hey!
Post-resurrection Superman.
Hey.
Nothing. I wish I had it.
It's jealous. Come on.
It looks good on him,
It looks
right?
good. Yeah.
Okay? Yeah.
That's
Tell me a
it.
bit more about yourself. Where do you fall in the timeline here? You're
I had a pretty bad scrape with Doomsday.
you're looking better.
Regeneration Matrix doesn't wonders. But pretty much dead. I was brought back to the fortress by ancient Kryptonian technology called the Eradicator. I was placed in a regeneration matrix, and then I was awoken when things got so bad that, the real Man of Steel needed to come back.
Back in black
And I
indeed.
would say during the reign of the Superman, I don't know if you're going to say this, you had the best line in that whole thing. I should have told you earlier. But when you come back in this giant round tank that just kind of walks across the ocean floor.
I know. Shocking.
That we saw earlier is menacing Coast City. And the heroes are waiting for someone like you to come back, and they're saying, oh no, Coast City's about to be destroyed. And you come out and you had the best line. Over my dead body.
Yeah.
He also has a wit of steel, too. Now, why did you pick this costume?
This was the Kryptonian luster. This was the traditional Kryptonian garb. This is what I felt was appropriate to make my mark and let everyone know that I was back.
And, when people see this, do they give you a reaction to it? What kind of response do you get when people see this? All right.
Black is beautiful. I can agree.
It's slimming, too. Now, what is this aspect of Superman mean to you personally?
Personally, it means that you can overcome anything in your life. The comics, they like to imitate life a little bit, and then this are going to
be killed by some Tony monster back in the day. But there's a lot of things in life that we can overcome.
All right. Woo!